I was about 7 years of age, and it was dark, cold winter night, and my father and I had just finished saying goodbye to our family members. It was Christmas Eve, and my aunt and uncle just went home from visiting. A simple family ritual done every year on Christmas Eve as usual. Before I knew it, I had kicked off my winter boots and was in bed. My mom and dad had came into the room and spoke with soft words to tell me good night. I couldn't wait for Christmas. It was my most favorite holiday of the year. The presents, the Christmas dinner, everything just seemed so perfect. That's when the holiday season, well, at this point, didn't go to bed thinking about Christmas and wondering what the possibility could be under the tree. But inevitably, my eyelids grew heavier, and the light glow from the moon reflecting off of the snow was too soothing as soon as I fell asleep. All of a sudden, I was awake, thinking it was Christmas. I was overjoyed to open up my gifts, but I heard something odd. My parents were usually up and making breakfast. I am pretty much a heavy sleeper. I heard as it was mumbling sound, not a "oh my god, it's a monster shit your pants" sound, but just enough that I could hear it. Added to the strange noise, I also heard big thumps and for footsteps. We have wooden floors, so those of you who also do know what I'm talking about. Which it was strange. Even my father didn't make thumps that loud when he was walked. So curious and carefree child I was, went to investigate the noises. I checked upstairs, my parents' room, the bathrooms, everything, but found nothing. The only two places were left in the living room and the kitchen. When I stepped into the living room, I had found the source of mumblings, and it was my mother and father tied up in a rope and with cloths around their mouths as for the front of the Christmas tree, and all the presents. I suddenly went into shock, and my parents weren't the ones to play pranks either. Being scared, I rushed to fetch a kitchen knife to cut open the rope. All of a sudden, I heard the noise coming from the living room. It was thumping again. I heard it back there, and next to my parents was a tall man in a black, sort of robe-like thin cloth around him. It had a hood. He wore heavy, what seemed to be steel-toed boots. The most deafening characteristic of the mysterious man was the mask he wore. The mask was black. It had huge holes for the eyes, rimmed with metal. There was a long plastic thing, looks like string, was tied to the knot to keep the mask on. But the only thing I remember was the most horrifying black beak on its mask, curving it downwards almost like a hellish bird from Nightmare. This was in real life. I was frozen in shock, standing there as the hell bird stared blankly at me, as if though he was a every soul in through his body. I did nothing, and seconds it felt like total hours, until the Birdman spoke with a light, formal yet whispered-like voice, revealing that he was a man. When it was it really a man or not? "I am the bringer of oblivion," he said. "What do you plan on doing, you bastard?" I replied. Simply, he snickered. Behind him, I noticed a bag. He reached into the bag and pulled out the gasoline tank and started dousing my parents with the gas. I went to attack him, but then he punched my stomach. I fell to the ground, and it also broke some of my ribs. "Now, let's not be that way, okay? I expected you to sit and behave like a good little boy." He started covering the tree and presents with gas, threw the tank down, and also spilling the gasoline everywhere. He grabbed me by the shoulder. He then threw me by the front door. "Merry Christmas," he said, dropping an enclosed envelope and a mask identical to his. He then took a big Zippo lighter and ignited. He threw the lighter to my parents, and instantly engulfing them and everything into flames. He then jumped out of the window and ran towards the dark behind our house. I watched as they were screaming in agony under the cloths, and their skin started to melt away and char. I went to help them, but the house and everything was just engulfed into flames. The last word I heard from my father was, "Just run, son. Go and run as fast as you can." Or at least that's what I could make out from him. I went to run out of the house, knowing sadly contemplating whatever I should leave or not. I reached for the door, and my foot stumbled upon something. It was a mask and a letter. For some reason, I took a look at the mask and the letter. When I finally got the chance to open up the letter, my parents were gone, and all my happiness crushed as the letter that followed. From the bringer of Oblivion. I knew you would keep this. Hello, if you are reading this. Then that means you're very lucky. I am the bringer of Oblivion, and this letter of Oblivion with this letter and a mask was left for you as well. But more importantly, I left you something much more anger. Ha 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 ha. Don't cry, because it will do no good whatsoever. I have left with you with a task, and a new life that you could choose to lead. Take the mask and keep the words in your head, because I know they'll be burned into your memory. And you are older, maybe even now, depending on where you're reading this. You can take this mask and do the deed I had done to you and your family to another. You can take the rage out of you. Don't worry, it feels good, I know. Burn the house, leave a letter, and a mask identical to those youngest of household, and then burn the rest of them and all. I know you can do this. I feel the fucking rage inside you. It has consumed you. So release it. Do with this, my child. Spread Oblivion to wherever you may find subtle. At the same time I read this, I stayed in the foster home for God knows how many years. But he was right about the rage. It's controlled my body. Sometimes I think to myself what would have happened, and what have been done may have not occurred. But there is no frickin' way I would become him, I thought to myself. I am now 18 years old, and the rage said today, and the letter is still stuck inside my mind. It's all burned there, even as I'm hoping this mask and this letter to the legs of every lucky 5-year-old little girl who just happens to be the youngest of a family of 4.